Margot Wilson's story, the beginning of the unraveling. All these credit cards are maxed out, Mrs. Wilson, and they're all under your name. The woman at the bank looked at me with sympathy, but her kind tone didn't help. She slid several papers across the desk toward me, each one filled with scary red numbers. There has to be some mistake, I said quickly. My hands were shaking as I looked at the papers. I only have one credit card, and I barely use it. The woman leaned in gently. It looks like your husband added you as an authorized user on these accounts. All the applications have your signature. She pointed at the bottom of the forms, and sure enough, the signatures did look like mine, but something felt off. The handwriting wasn't quite right. My stomach twisted. I never signed these, I whispered. I've never even seen these credit cards. The woman's face changed, her sympathy turning into quiet concern. Mrs. Wilson, the total amount owed is $5,280.63, and all 5 accounts are over 3 months behind on payments. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I just sat there, stunned. My thoughts were spinning, trying to make sense of what I was hearing. Just 4 days ago, my husband James, my partner of 13 years, had packed one suitcase, kissed our daughter goodbye while I was at the grocery store, and disappeared. He left a note on the kitchen counter that said, "Found someone who appreciates me, don't try to contact me, we'll call about divorce proceedings." And now, sitting in the bank, I was being told that he hadn't just left me and our daughter, he had wrecked my financial life too. My name is Margot Wilson. I'm 31 years old, a part-time admin assistant at a dental clinic in Portland, Oregon. James and I met in college. We got married young and had our daughter, Sophie, a year later. I had dreams, big ones. I wanted to finish school, work in healthcare, maybe travel, but instead, I stayed home with Sophie, worked part-time when I could, and let James take care of the finances. He said it made more sense that way. All I could think about now was Sophie. I wanted to keep our home, keep her in school, and protect her from all this, but I didn't know how I was going to do that, not with the kind of debt James had left me with. As I drove home from the bank, trying not to cry, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "Margot, this is Heather. James told me you were controlling and financially abusive, but now I'm starting to see things differently. Call me if you want to know what he's been hiding. Heather." The same name James had whispered in his sleep a few weeks ago. I remembered it clearly. I'd told myself it was nothing, just a dream, but now, it felt like a warning I hadn't listened to. Looking back at the red flags. When I first met James in college, he was smart, driven, and seemed protective. I grew up in a very unstable home. My mom struggled with addiction, and I spent most of my childhood craving safety and routine. James gave me that, or at least, I thought he did. We got married quickly. I was pregnant with Sophie, and James had a plan: finish school, get a job in tech, buy a house, start a family. I was happy to support him. I put my own education on hold and focused on raising Sophie. James handled all the money. He said it was easier that way. He gave me an allowance for groceries and bills, and told me not to worry about the rest. At first, I thought he was just being responsible, but over time, it started to feel like control. He didn't like me hanging out with certain friends. He said they were bad influences. He discouraged me from going back to school, saying childcare was too expensive. "You don't want strangers raising our daughter, do you?" he'd say. So I stayed home. I worked a few hours here and there. I stopped seeing people who asked too many questions. Slowly, I lost my independence. There were signs he wasn't being honest, like the nights he said he was working late but couldn't explain the receipts I found, or the second phone he kept locked, or how he'd quickly close his laptop when I walked into the room, but he was always so good at turning things around. 2 years ago, I found a receipt from a fancy restaurant on a night he said he was working. When I asked him about it, he said he'd been planning a surprise anniversary dinner. He made me feel guilty for doubting him. I ended up apologizing. There never was a dinner, just a bracelet that came in the mail, and I told myself I had ruined the surprise, because I wanted to believe him. Even now, with everything falling apart, part of me still wondered if I could have done something differently. Maybe if I'd been better, more supportive, he wouldn't have left. Maybe I could have saved us. The truth from Heather. I didn't call Heather right away. Instead, I picked up Sophie from school, put on a smile, and listened to her talk about her day. I didn't want her to know how scared I was. I didn't want her to worry. That night, after she started her homework, I sat at the kitchen table with a notebook. I wrote down every expense, every bit of income, trying to figure out how we could survive. My job only brought in $1,800 a month. Our mortgage was $1,400. There wasn't enough left for groceries, bills, or Sophie's activities. No matter how I did the math, it didn't work. Then my phone buzzed again. Another text from Heather. I understand if you don't trust me, I wouldn't either. But James has been lying to both of us. I can prove it. This time, I called. Hello? She answered. Her voice was soft, with a slight southern accent. This is Margot Wilson, I said, trying to sound calm. You texted me about James. And for the next 30 minutes, Heather told me everything. She was 26, a graphic designer from Nashville. She met James online about 9 months ago. He told her I was a manipulative wife who refused to work and spent all his money. He said I had gambling problems and had destroyed our credit. He told her we couldn't talk openly because I was spying on his emails and calls. I sat there in shock, watching Sophie work on her math homework in the other room. None of that is true, I whispered. He managed everything. I was never allowed access to our accounts, and now I'm discovering he's left me with thousands of dollars in debt. I believe you, Heather said. I didn't at first, but things started to feel off. Then yesterday, I saw his laptop open. I found emails, transfers from your joint accounts. When I asked him about it, he got angry. That's when he admitted he hadn't been fully honest about your marriage. Heather sent me screenshots, messages where James talked about his plan to dump all the debt on me and run away to start a new life with her. He had emptied our savings little by little. He had even made plans to isolate me from family and friends so I'd have no one to turn to when he left. I stared at those messages for a long time, feeling numb. The man I married, who I thought would protect us, had carefully and quietly destroyed everything we built, and he did it with a smile, pretending to be the victim the entire time. Now I was left to pick up the pieces, for myself, and for Sophie. Late one night, as I sat on the couch, going through a pile of bills and bank statements, I heard the soft sound of footsteps behind me. I turned to see Sophie, my 11-year-old daughter, standing quietly in the hallway in her pajamas, hugging her stuffed bear. You should be in bed, sweetheart, I said gently. This is just grown-up stuff. Sophie didn't move. Her little face was serious, far too serious for someone her age. It's about Dad, isn't it? She asked. And money? I paused, caught between wanting to protect her and knowing she was already aware something was wrong. What makes you think that? I asked softly. She stepped closer. I heard you on the phone, and I saw the papers on the table. Also, before Dad left, he told me you might be sad for a while because of some financial problems. He said it wasn't his fault. I felt a rush of anger rise inside me, James trying to spin the truth in Sophie's mind, trying to make himself look innocent while leaving us in a mess he created. There's a lot going on, Sophie, I told her carefully. Some things are pretty complicated. Your dad made choices that hurt us financially, but I'm working on fixing it. Sophie walked over and sat next to me on the couch. She reached out and placed her small hand over mine. Don't cry, Mom, she said softly. I'll help you. Her words were so simple, but they touched my heart deeply. In that moment, her love made me feel both heartbroken and healed all at once. That's really kind, honey, I whispered, but you don't need to worry about these things. But I already do, she said firmly, and I want to help. Miss Winters says kids can do more than adults think. Miss Winters was Sophie's favorite teacher, the one who ran the school's community service club. I smiled. Well, maybe you could help with some chores around the house. That would really make a difference. Sophie nodded seriously. I can do that, and more. After I tucked her back into bed, I returned to the paperwork with a heavy heart. The situation was worse than I'd imagined. Between the credit card debt, the home equity loan, and our daily expenses, we were drowning. Catherine, my lawyer, thought we had a strong case to fight the forged credit cards, but the home equity loan was trickier. It had my forged signature, and proving that would take time and money, two things I didn't have. The next morning brought a new problem. I logged into our phone account only to discover that James had removed me from our family plan. My phone no longer worked. When I called from Diane's phone, the company told me James claimed we were separated and that I agreed to get my own service. He had cut off my phone, my lifeline to Catherine, job prospects, and Sophie's school. Thankfully, Diane added me to her family plan so I could have a working phone again. But James's message was clear, he was trying to erase me from our shared life. That afternoon, a certified letter arrived. It was from James. He wanted to give me the house, but only if I took full responsibility for all the debt. He also offered just $300 a month in child support. For someone who made six figures, that was insulting. The documents claimed I had chosen to work less and had lived beyond my means using credit cards. That was a complete lie. James had always discouraged me from working more and controlled every financial decision in our home. As I stared at the papers, something inside me shifted. The sadness was still there, but now it was joined by something else, determination. James had built a trap, thinking I wouldn't have the strength or resources to fight, but he was wrong. The next day, I met with Catherine again. She spread my papers across her desk, emails, bank statements, text messages where James told me not to work overtime. It wasn't a lot, but it was something. "We'll find more," Catherine said confidently. "People like James always make a mistake, we just need to catch it." And so I got to work. I requested video footage from the bank where the home equity loan had been signed. I asked my employer to document how often James had discouraged me from working extra hours. I even reached out to Heather, James's ex-girlfriend, who agreed to give a statement about his lies. Meanwhile, Sophie was quietly building her own support system. She started making her own lunch, helped around the house, and even set up a lemonade stand. One weekend, she handed me a small bag of quarters and said, "This is for the bills, Mom." I hugged her tightly. "You're amazing, honey, but you really don't need to worry about the money." "I know," she said with a shrug, "but I just wanted to help while we wait for everyone else." "Everyone else?" I asked. She hesitated, then smiled mysteriously. "You'll see." Then came another shock. A letter from the mortgage company said we were behind on payments, only 1 month behind. But still, they had started foreclosure proceedings. When I called, I found out James had changed the contact information to his new address. That night, Catherine called. "The footage shows you weren't at the bank when the loan was signed," she said. "That helps, but the papers have a notary seal, which complicates things." "Does that mean someone pretended to be me?" "It's possible," she said seriously. "We'll subpoena the notary and find out." Just as we hung up, there was a knock on my door. A sheriff handed me a foreclosure notice. According to the document, there had been material misrepresentation on the equity loan. Another curveball. As if that wasn't enough, I got a text from an unknown number. "Thought you were clever getting your girlfriend to contact my wife. Back off or I'll make sure you and Sophie end up on the street by month's end." James had found out about my conversation with Heather, and now he was threatening me. But this time, he slipped up. He made a direct threat about our daughter, in writing. A few days later, my phone rang. "Margot, we need to talk," James said. His voice was tense. "The bank's investigating me. My accounts are frozen." "What did you do?" "I didn't do anything, James," I replied calmly. "You did this to yourself. You're trying to ruin me." Heather left. "The bank might press charges. You need to tell them it was a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" I asked coldly. "Like forging my name, pretending to be me, taking out loans I never agreed to?" "I made some bad choices," he admitted, "but I can't have fraud charges on my record. I'll lose everything." "Actions have consequences, James," I said. "You should come over tonight at 7. There are people you should meet." He was suspicious. "Is this a trap?" "Not a trap, an education." At 7 o'clock sharp, James stepped into our living room, and froze. The room was full of people: Catherine, Diane, my co-workers, Sophie's teacher, our neighbors, and even Heather. "What is this?" he whispered. Sophie walked forward holding a paper. "It's our community circle," she said. "I made a list of everyone who cares about us. You tried to isolate Mom, but you forgot something. I have friends too, and their parents, and our teachers, and neighbors." She handed him her map, Sophie and me in the center, surrounded by names and connections. James looked around the room, seeing not just supporters, but witnesses. Catherine helped build our legal case. Diane helped with a new job. Miss Winters organized families to help with meals and childcare. Mr. Patel helped fix my credit. Heather shared the truth. Together, they formed a safety net stronger than anything James tried to tear apart. "You thought I had no one," I said softly, "but you were wrong." Sophie reached up and held my hand. See, Mom, I told you I'd help. And she had, more than I ever expected. Through my daughter's quiet strength and love, I found a power inside me I didn't know I had. James didn't leave our home in defeat, he left in realization. Because the wealth he tried to control was never truly financial, it was the wealth of connection, of people who cared, of truth. And thanks to Sophie, I was finally ready to start again, with hope, and with community.